dear doctors, we are Group 20. This article we researched about the food and beverage and healthy field is named Variety Predicts Discretionary Food and Beverage Intake of Australian Audits. This article utilized data from an online dietary survey of Australian audits to investigate the impact of dietary variety on the intake of discretionary foods and beverages. The study concludes that dietary variety is positively associated with the intake of discretionary foods and beverages. For each of my 5 teammates to explain the detail now.
The solution buyer sessions emphasize the study aimed to provide valuable insights for public health practitioners and policymakers in developing effective interventions to promote healthy eating habits among Australian adults. The study finds reveal a significant association between higher food varieties and increasing discretionary food and beverage intake among Australian adults. It highlights the needs of interventions to focus on reducing food varieties and raising awareness of the adverse impact of high food varieties on discretionary food and beverage intake. The insights from this study are particularly relevant for public health practitioners and policymakers responsible for designing the implement interventions to encourage healthy eating habits within the population. By understanding the intricate relationship between food varieties and discretionary food and beverage intake, these individuals can tell us their interventions to address this significant issue. The study impression underscored the importance of developing target interventions that address the impact of food varieties on discretionary food and beverage intake, ultimately contributing to the promotion of healthier eating habits and overall well-being among Australian adults.
Analyses were conducted in SPSS version 26, median number of categories consumed and total daily surveillance of discretionary food and beverages per capita in women and men across subgroups was determined. Median was selected for presenting these results due to the non-normal distribution of data. A hierarchical multiple regression was conducted to determine the association between variety and overall intake of discretionary foods and beverage, while controlling for age, BMI, and sex. Step 1 included demographic variables and Step 2 variety. Finally, standardized and non-standardized coefficients are used to determine the relative importance and clinical importance of independent variables in predicting discrete food and beverage intake.
The objectives and predictive methods from the productivity research article can be summarized as follows. The objectives, the number 1 is to examine the importance of variety in predicting discretionary food and beverage intake among Australian adults. Number 2 is to assess if increasing the variety of consumed discretionary foods and beverages can predict a decrease in total intake that contribute to healthier dietary patterns. For predictive methods, the number 1 use of regression models to examine whether the variety discretionary food beverage consumption predicts total intake and diet quality. Number 2 is calculation of the proportion of sample each category and the mean percentage contribute to total intake.
The study examines the relationship between the variety of discretionary food and beverage intake and overall consumption among Australian adults. Using data from an online survey of 235,203 participants, the research found that the median number of discretionary categories consumed was 8, with each additional category linked to a half-serving increasing daily intake. Anchor cookies takeaway and confectionery made up about 2/3 of the total daily intake, with anchor being the largest contributor. The study suggests that the reducing the variety of discretionary foods rather than just focusing on proportion size of frequency could be a novel approach to addressing overconsumption and improving diet quality.
They study analyzed the association between variety and discretionary food and beverage consumption among Australian adults, utilizing data obtained from an online survey and analyzed through a standardized methodology. The finding suggested that limiting the assortment of these items may prove to be an effective strategy for reducing intake. Additionally, alcohol, cakes and cookies, takeaway foods, and confectionery were identified as key targets for achieving significant reductions in population-level consumption. These results have important implications for public health policies and nutritional guidelines.